Very nice. Getting a good picture of everybody so we look nice and handsome and thin.
Beautiful.
Perfect.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
North Korea, international land of mystery. You'll probably know it for its handsome rulers and tales of death-defying escape. But there happens to be a lot more to this small hermit nation than meets the eye, and I'm going to delve into its buried treasures today with all of you. Using an iceberg created by Psykim, not Psycom, I will take you down each tier as the information gets weirder and weirder. Before we get to the super juicy bits, we need to cover tier 1 and outline all the basics that you may or may not know. So buckle up, grab your naengmyeon cold noodles, and get ready for the North Korea Iceberg Explained. Kim Dynasty. You can't talk about North Korea without talking about the Kims. 3 generations of the same family who have served as leaders of the Workers' Party of Korea, and by default, the DPRK's leaders since its formation in 1948. Kim Il-sung, guerrilla hero and eternal president. His son, Kim Jong-il, movie lover, women's man, and eternal general. And the current leader, Kim Jong-un, Swiss cheese advocate and inspiration for hairdressers everywhere. The Kim family are revered like gods in the DPRK and shape every facet of life within the country. Every home contains their portraits, and every city is littered with monuments to their greatness. The deaths of Kim Il-sung in 1994 and Kim Jong-il in 2011 led to intense mourning periods and videos of the nation crying at the loss of their great leaders. Let me just interrupt myself here for a little bit of a quick fire round. Just the things that are banned in North Korea during a period of mourning. So they banned laughing, they banned drinking, and they banned grocery shopping. So good luck if you need to buy any eggs. They'll come up a lot in this iceberg, so let's keep this brief for now. Just know that the Kims rule the show, and they tend to be a bit weird. The Korean War. The other aspect of Korea most people will know it for, especially in the US, is the Korean War. To talk about the Korean War, we need to talk a bit about how the two Koreas came to exist in the first place. After World War II, Korea was no longer occupied by the Japanese, but the Soviets and Americans didn't really know what to do with it, so they divided it in half in 1945 with the intention of eventually reforming one nation. This obviously did not happen, and both halves of the peninsula formed their own governments in 1948. The North became the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, led by Kim Il-sung from Pyongyang, supported by the Soviets, and the South became the Republic of Korea, led by Syngman Rhee, supported by the Americans. Now, both governments felt that they were the one true ruler of the whole peninsula, and this led to a little bit of extreme tension.
Don't cross this line with your hand. No, how dare you? If you speak again, I'm going to kill you. Do you understand?
Both Koreas operated, and still operate today, under very different ideologies. The South remains a capitalist society influenced by the US, and the North, or DPRK, was formed with the goal of forming a socialist utopia, aided by the communist Soviet Union. The DPRK felt the whole peninsula should benefit from this and unify, so marched into the south on the 25th of June 1950, aided by China and the Soviets. In under 2 months, the DPRK had occupied almost the entire peninsula.
How are you coming first? Why are you fucking coming first?
Then the UN, and more specifically the US, got involved. Landing in September 1950, they cut off North Korean supply lines and forced the DPRK and its allies back, leading to an extremely bloody conflict. The Korean War led to around 3 million deaths, with a huge proportion of these being civilians, a higher proportion in fact than in World War II or the Vietnam War. North Korea itself was also bombed to a level never before seen in history, with almost every single one of its major cities being entirely destroyed. The Korean War eventually came to a close on the 27th of July 1953 with the signing of an armistice. Now, no treaty has ever actually been signed to signal the end to this conflict, which means it is still technically going on as a frozen conflict to this day, and this goes some way to explain why the border between the two countries is so heavily armed. Speaking of the border between the two countries, Demilitarized Zone. The Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ, is a buffer zone dividing the Korean peninsula in two and separating North and South Korea. It spans about 250 kilometers in length and 4 kilometers in width. Despite its name, The demilitarized zone is ironically the most heavily demilitarized border in the world, containing more than 1 million landmines and being guarded by countless soldiers on either side. The DMZ came into existence after the Korean Armistice Agreement that ended the Korean War. There have been numerous incidents within this border region, with around 500 South Korean soldiers, 50 American soldiers, and 250 North Korean soldiers killed in violence between 1953 and 1999 alone. There are also numerous cases of North Korean defectors escaping across this dangerous regional land. Inside the DMZ lies the village of Panmunjeon, which has stood as the joint security area since 1953. Any negotiations between the two Koreas have taken place in the shared location since the 1953 armistice, and any prisoner transfers have taken place here on the famous and ominously named Bridge of No Return.
Ooh.
Nuclear weapons. North Korea is one of the 9 countries across the globe with a military nuclear weapons program, and as of now is estimated to own about 50 nuclear weapons, with the sufficient materials to produce 6 or 7 more each year. In 2003, North Korea withdrew from the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, leading to global concern. Since 2006, the country has conducted 6 nuclear tests, each of which has led to condemnation and sanctions from across the globe. These nuclear tests are both a show of strength for the small, isolated country, and also act as a deterrent to protect themselves from countries that they would view as enemies. Dislike for South Korea. This is a pretty obvious one given the shared history of these two nations. As mentioned already, both North and South Korea proclaim to be the rightful owner of the entire Korean peninsula, which isn't a great start when it comes to having positive relations. The initial few years of each nation set the two countries on very different paths both economically and ideologically, and caused raised tensions between both. The Korean War is an obvious marker of the conflict and the peak of negative tensions between these countries. Since the armistice, both North and South Korea have engaged in a sort of mine is bigger than yours style of competition. North Korea built the Pyongyang Metro, which made South Korea build the Seoul Metro. South Korea built a 98-meter tall flagpole in the DMZ. North Korea built a 160-meter tall flagpole in the DMZ. Relations have remained spiky for the entire existence of these two countries, with a few moments of reduced tensions led mainly by South Korea's Sunshine Policy, which has been cancelled and restarted a number of times. Current tensions have increased dramatically, with North Korea ending its goal of reunification with the South and declaring South Korea its one true enemy. This, along with the demolition of the reunification monument in North Korea, has led to worries about an escalation in conflict between these nations. Only time will tell now. The Hermit Kingdom. The Hermit Kingdom is a nickname given to North Korea regularly due to its isolation from the rest of the world. A hermit kingdom is actually a generic term for any country that chooses to isolate itself physically or metaphorically from world affairs. North Korea's hard borders and a refusal to enter into talks with the majority of the world leads to its hermit status. Ironically, the first use of the Hermit Kingdom nomina was in an 1882 book describing Korea during the Joseon dynasty. Other hermit kingdoms around the world include Turkmenistan and Eritrea, two countries I do want to talk about in the future on this channel.
Spoilers.
In recent years, North Korea has entered the world stage a little more regularly, with its team qualifying for the 2010 World Cup in South Africa and entering into multiple Olympics, including the 2024 Paris Games. There were fears during COVID that North Korea would further isolate itself from the world permanently given its exceedingly strict lockdown that lasted far longer than anywhere else in the world, but its appearance at the 2024 Olympics and its current attempt to qualify for the 2026 North American World Cup may be signs of the Hermit Nation finally coming out of its shell. Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un. Donald Trump has been an unlikely figure in the North Korean peace process, and whether or not he's been successful, and will be in future, is up for deliberation. Trump's involvement begins with the 2018 to 2019 Korean peace process, initiated to denuclearize the peninsula and restore relations between North and South Korea as the DPRK posed a direct threat to the United States with its missile technology. In 2018, the new South Korean president Moon Jae-in announced the return of the Sunshine Policy, which had the aim of reducing tensions between the two Koreas. Over the course of a few years, a number of summits were held between Kim Jong-un, Moon Jae-in, and Donald Trump. Through these, Trump became the first sitting president to meet a North Korean leader and step foot in North Korea. Kim became the first North Korean leader to step foot in South Korea, and Moon became the first South Korean leader to make a speech from within North Korea. At first, tensions did ease dramatically, and promises were made on both sides regarding denuclearization and the reduction of sanctions, and the reduction of joint military drills between the US and South Korea. For their part, North Korea did begin to dismantle a number of sites related to satellite and missile launch facilities. The US and South cancelled military drills, and the North decided to forego an anti-US parade within its country that year. Unfortunately, progress did not continue to be made, and these talks began to break down. A summit held in Sweden between the US and North Korean delegates only lasted one day, with the North accusing the US of behaving like gangsters and demanding far too much for little in return. Trump continued to communicate with Kim and described a letter from the Supreme Leader as beautiful. Trump has made clear that if re-elected, he would seek to continue talks with the DPRK regarding peace, and it's yet to be seen whether he will win the election, and if so, there may be some updates I can make to this in future. Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman, arguably the greatest rebounding forward in NBA history, and also close friend of Kim Jong-un. Rodman and Kim's friendship has long been the subject of conspiracy, memes, and confusion. Rodman first visited the DPRK in 2013 as part of a basketball tour, and apparently became close with Kim quickly, becoming a staunch advocate of peace between the US and North Korea. He regularly talked about the need for then-President Obama to pick up the phone and speak to Kim. It seemed like Rodman even had some pull with the North Korean government. He tweeted out asking for Kim to release political prisoner Kenneth Bae, which happened the following year. Rodman returned to North Korea on numerous occasions to visit Kim and give him gifts like signed basketball jerseys. According to him, Kim is a huge basketball fan. During the Trump presidency, Rodman continued to visit Korea, and this is when suspicions that Rodman may be working on behalf of Trump and the US government began. These rumours were bolstered by actions such as Rodman giving Kim a copy of Trump's book Art of the Deal as a gift, and the fact that Autowarier was released the same day as one of Rodman's visits to North Korea. Who is Autowarier? We'll come on to him in a minute. Rodman and the US government have denied his involvement in CIA tasks designed to ease tensions with the Hermit Nation, with Rodman claiming he's doing this simply to help promote peace and release prisoners. Now, about North Korea's most famous prisoner release. Autowarier. The Autowarier ordeal is still fresh in many people's minds given it only happened in 2016. Autowarier was a college student from the US who was imprisoned within North Korea on a charge of subversion. Entering North Korea as part of a guided holiday tour, Warier was arrested while waiting to depart the country from Pyongyang International Airport. Warier's conviction was based on footage of him sneaking into a restricted floor of his hotel and attempting to steal a propaganda poster from the wall. For this action, he was sentenced to 15 years imprisonment in a labour camp. A short while after this sentencing, Warier suffered some kind of neurological attack or injury and fell into a coma. This fact was not revealed until 2017, when North Korean officials claimed this coma was a result of botulism and a sleeping pill. Warier was released back to the US later the same month and passed away 5 days after reaching America. Coroners are not entirely sure what caused Warier's coma, as despite claims of a head injury from some, there were no signs of fractures or damage to Warier's skull. North Korea later released footage of Warier confessing to his crimes within a court to prove that they were justified in his arrest. The aftermath of this incident was a torrent of condemnation from the US and around the globe, with most blaming the North Korean government directly for Warier's death. As a result of the situation, American tourists were banned from visiting North Korea from July 2017. While US citizens can no longer visit North Korea, it doesn't mean that no one can. Tours of North Korea. Believe it or not, holidays to North Korea are not actually impossible. There is a multitude of specialised travel agencies such as Koryo Tours that work directly with the DPRK to provide guided holiday tours of the country. They aren't exactly a normal trip, however. Entrance to North Korea for tourists can only be made from China, either by flying from Beijing on Air Koryo or taking an overnight train through the northern peninsula to Pyongyang. Once in Pyongyang, you'll be met by a pair of guides who will remain with you for the entire trip. These guides are there for your own benefit, as well as the DPRK's. They'll keep you informed, entertained, and provide translation, while also ensuring you don't go anywhere you shouldn't or say anything that might cause issues. These tours used to be extremely restricted in what you could see, but in recent years have relaxed more, with tourists visiting a number of cities and small towns across the country. Photography rules have relaxed too, providing ample footage of the parts of North Korea you don't get to see on the news. You can visit museums, monuments, gift shops, and restaurants across the country, as well as seeing live shows and parades. Athletes from around the world sometimes visit the nation for the famous Pyongyang Marathon also. In recent years, tourism ceased due to the COVID pandemic, but this is slowly changing. Russian tourists have been allowed back since the start of 2024, and the borders are reopening to the rest of the world very shortly. If you do visit North Korea, just remember to respect the rules of the nation, even if you disagree with them. The last entry provided ample reason for doing this. And that is the end of Tier 1, so thank you for getting this far into the video. Make sure if you want to see more, like the following parts and other videos on this channel, you hit like and subscribe, maybe put the notification bell on. This is obviously my first video, and I'll know there'll be things to improve, but I'm hoping to do that as I go. So, without anything else, on to Tier 2, as we move down this iceberg on North Korea Explained. 90s Famine. So I'm going to combine two entries into one here, given also on Tier 2 there's a reference to the Soviet Union collapse leading to this famine. It's probably easier to just explain the famine and its causes here as one entry, rather than to split it up. The North Korean famine, which is also known as the Arduous March, took place between 1994 and 1998. There was a number of factors that led to this event, and its horrific death toll. Floods, notably of biblical proportions, hit the peninsula in 1995 and affected up to 30% of the country. When only 20% of North Korea's total landmass is arable terrain, this has a huge impact on agriculture. At the same time, North Korea's greatest ally, the Soviet Union, had collapsed, cutting all aid to the country and ending its tariff-free oil imports. This left North Korea reeling with not enough resources to supply demand. As coal mines flooded, they required electrical pumps to clear them, but the lack of coal led to a lack of electricity. China stepped in to assist after the Soviet Union's 1991 collapse, providing up to 77% of North Korea's fuel imports and 68% of its food imports for a time. But in 1993 it faced a grain shortage and the need for hard currency, so cut its aid to North Korea dramatically. This left the North unable to produce enough food to feed its population, and without the necessary allies to call on for aid. The total death toll of this famine is unknown, with estimates ranging between 240,000 and 3.5 million. North Korea had a population of 22 million at the time, so wherever the death toll lands, it was a significant portion of the population. The government tried to handle the situation with propaganda and mass appeals, such as the Eat 2 Meals approach to ration food, but these proved ineffective at stemming the tide of this ordeal. The Arduous March is a dark spot in North Korea's history, and one a large percentage of the population won't have forgotten. In 1995, the North Korean government finally requested international aid, which was eventually granted by UNICEF and a number of nations, including the US. The US response has proven controversial though, with some claiming that they used food as a weapon, limiting it unless the North agreed to peace talks and certain disarmament requirements. Songun. Songun is the military-first policy of North Korea, which prioritizes the Korean People's Army in the allocation of resources and in any state affairs. Songun guides economic and political life in North Korea and has dominated its politics since the mid-90s, especially after the death of Kim Il-sung. This policy means the military is the center point of pretty much everything in North Korea, and stems from Kim Il-sung's belief that a country could not be truly free unless it had an unbreakable defense in the form of a military. Songun took its roots during the 90s famine, when the military was drafted to do much of the frontline work in distributing food and combating floods. From this point, they've remained the center point of the DPRK's focus and take precedence over civil affairs and any other aspect of government. People have different views on why this is, with some claiming it stems from the Kim dynasty ensuring the military would not revolt against them by ensuring loyalty during hard times, such as the Arduous March. Songun is unlikely to change anytime soon, and the country's devotion to its military is visible in its annual parades in Kim Il-sung Square in Pyongyang. Yoni Park. Yoni Park is the most famous North Korean defector, and also the most controversial. She fled from North Korea in 2007 to China, and since moved to South Korea and the US. She's created a media career from sharing her life stories in audio, video and book form, and gains massive audiences for live shows and on her social media. While I'm sure she has faced serious hardships during her life, there's the slight inkling in everyone's mind that she might be exaggerating a bit. Her own mother, along with a number of Korean defectors from the same city as her, have claimed her stories change depending on the audience, and are often completely fabricated or wildly exaggerated. Exaggerating these stories has the knock-on effect of making other defectors less believable and lowering the sympathy and aid they may receive. Yoni Park has made some famous media appearances, such as on the Joe Rogan podcast, which has been memed a great deal due to her supposed exaggerations for dramatic effect. The Washington Post conducted an investigation in 2023 that found there was little truth to Park's stories. Park has defended herself by claiming that any fabrications are down to her imperfect memory and language skills. It isn't my job to decide either way whether Park is lying, but the only benefit to this is to herself, and to the detriment of her fellow defectors and the worldwide opinion of North Korea. Kim Jong-un death rumours. This is a pretty vague entry, but it boils down to the fact that whenever Kim Jong-un isn't seen in public for more than a few weeks, the world seems to assume he's dead. This isn't entirely without basis, given Kim supposedly suffers from a number of health conditions due to his weight, such as diabetes and blood pressure issues. In 2020, he wasn't seen for a few months, and this led to a flurry of experts branding him dead, though it was the COVID lockdown and so everyone was probably quite bored at home. That said, the frequency of these rumours is a little ridiculous, and as of right now, the Supreme Leader is absolutely alive. There are reports of North Korean doctors searching the world for new treatments, however, as Kim's weight has skyrocketed, and his health conditions have become noticeably worse. So, who knows? Maybe the rumours will be true one day. For now though, he's still kicking. The 28 approved haircuts. So, this entry refers to the long-running suggestion that you can only have one of 28 approved haircuts in North Korea, split between men and women. While it's true that long hair and wild styles are not approved in the nation, it's also untrue that you can only have one of the pictured styles in the hairdressers. Numerous tourists that have visited the DPRK have debunked this and claimed that the pictures are merely suggestions, like you'd see outside any barbershop or hairdressers on the high street. There's certainly some strict rules on appearance, but there's a touch more visual freedom than a lot of news outlets would have you believe. Although, you can't copy Kim Jong-un's hair. Footage of family washing laundry in a lake. This is footage of a family cleaning laundry in a lake. I'm not quite sure what else there is to say about this one. I think it was released to attack the nation and prove that its citizens are living in poor conditions, but that would also simultaneously attack the countless nations across the planet where people in rural areas do indeed wash their clothes in rivers or lakes to this day. The full footage is out there if you want to see it, otherwise, here's a spinning wrap. The Sony Pictures hack. This is an event some of you may remember well. In 2015, Sony was preparing to release their new comedy, The Interview, which starred James Franco and Seth Rogen as TV producers meeting and assassinating Kim Jong-un. Understandably, North Korea wasn't thrilled with the concept of the film and demanded Sony cancel its release. Later, Sony Pictures was hacked in a massive cyber attack, with threats to attack any cinema showing the film and to leak all the details of Sony staff. The group behind this attack called themselves Guardians of Peace. Sony promptly cancelled its theatrical release and went for a digital-only approach, which then President Obama later criticised as giving in to terror. The obvious accusation here would be North Korea as the responsible party for this attack, which is exactly what the US government did. It's not that simple, however. A number of cybersecurity experts have claimed that this attack could not have been North Korea, and that any evidence was merely circumstantial. To this day, there has been no definitive proof of North Korea's involvement in the Sony hack, but the US government maintains that they are to blame. The movie's fine, by the way. Solid average. Soul Pancake video. The Soul Pancake video refers to this one video on the participant's YouTube channel called I Survived North Korea. This video entails a man called Charles telling the story of his escape from North Korea and his time in a labour camp there. It's a pretty emotional watch, and I think rather than explaining it step by step here, it's better for you to just watch it separately after this video. I'll include the link in the description, but just be aware, it can be quite heavy stuff. Persecution of Christians. This entry refers specifically to Christians, but I'm going to approach this as an all religions topic, as North Korea is very dismissive and antagonistic against the idea of religion full stop, claiming it's a Western method of indoctrination. Most of the information in this section does come from the UN, not from North Korea directly, so just be aware of that. According to a number of resolutions passed by the UN, North Korea considers any form of religious activity as political crimes as they may challenge the Kim dynasty. North Korea views religion, specifically Christianity, as American imperialism and therefore wants to ensure it does not fully take root in the nation. Speaking of Christians, there are reports of mass incarcerations and even executions of people that did not renounce their faith during Kim Il-sung's rule. All churches in the nation were closed during the 50s and 60s, though recently 4 churches were opened within Pyongyang, 2 Catholic, 1 Protestant and 1 Russian Orthodox. In 2023, the country was ranked 0 out of 4 for religious freedom, and ranked as the worst country in the world to be a Christian. Maybe don't bring your Bible if you're visiting. No, seriously, don't. They're banned. And an American citizen was detained for a number of months in 2014 for intentionally leaving one behind in the bathroom of Chongjin Sailors Club. That brings us to the end of Tier 2. Thank you so much for watching this video, and please subscribe if you want to see the other parts very soon. This has been Every Country Explained, and I'll see you on the other side. Peace!
All the other kids with the monster kisses.